Welcome to Third Floor Views, a production of Chesapeake Family Life, where we talk about health, education, and living with kids. I'm your host, Janet Jefferson. Today, we're talking about how to recognize when your kids are falling behind in school. And joining us is Tiffanie Catron. She's founder and lead tutor of Priority Academic Tutoring. Thank you so much, Tiffanie, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
To our viewers, if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to put those in the comment section and we'll get to those as we can. Um, Tiffanie, the first question that I have for you is just to discuss the current situation of academia and kids and what's going on. We had this really intense past 2.5 years of the pandemic, and that really turning everything upside down. um, Kids have returned to in person for the most part, and unless you're immunocompromised and have some sort of exception. But what does that mean now? Where are kids, and where are they in terms of meeting grade level expectations?
So it has been a wild ride in the world in general, but in the world of education especially, I don't think that for whatever reason we weren't prepared in 2019, 2020 for what we faced. So um, we were looking at an abrupt shift to try to get people to online learning in that first March of the pandemic, and then the following school year. Looking at like, okay, let's get devices to students, let's get students on these online platforms, let's get teachers teaching via social media. Sorry, not social media, but virtual learning. And it was just a big shift and adjustment. And looking at that, this past school year was also a big adjustment coming back to school. Some students coming to school for the very first time entering second grade, or first grade. So there were a lot of shifts and adjustments on the ends of students, parents, teachers, admin. And one of the biggest fears was, oh my goodness, did my child learn at all during the pandemic, during virtual learning? And as a parent myself, I was teaching from home and listening to my own children learn from home. And it was just like, it was also a question of mine, like, how much are my students learning? How much are they getting? How much are my children learning? How are they grasping? So a big question is like, okay, where are we now? And clearly, we're seeing where many students are academically behind. However, I would also like to throw out there that we were looking at some students who were behind before the pandemic. So that may have added an additional element of playing catch up, if you will. So we have school systems now that are wanting teachers to play catch up in the classroom, and that and I can touch on that a little bit later. But the catch up game or the remediation game isn't necessarily the answer or the end all be all. So we are looking at this past school year here and going into the next school year, some things that have shifted. Um, the way that things are laid out and the way that things are structured in the classroom and in learning. And now I don't know why it took all of that to happen for us to realize, hey, we need to be embedding more technology in teaching, more technology in learning. So there are some shifts and differences. And while there are those shifts and differences, there are the elements of how do we get those skills that we lost, maybe.
Hmm. hmm Um, who is this impacting it the most? Is it affecting everyone equally, or are you seeing a really range of impacts in terms of how kids have been dealing with this?
Yeah, that's a loaded question to unpack, but it's an important question. Um, I'll look at it from the lens of how has the shift in education affected learners. One, children seem to be more resilient, and I like to use that word lightly because resilient doesn't mean we throw everything at you and we expect that you just get it right up. But the children have been able to overcome these challenges and walk some of us as parents and educators through the technical difficulties and things that come along with this newfound technology piece in learning. And they've come in and they've showed us like, hey, we were paying attention when you were teaching online last year. So it's affecting all students, positively and negatively. Parents as well, it is affected. I mean, parents have had to learn how to juggle maybe a job from home, and students learning from home. And now they're going back to school, and you were already throwing all this educational jargon in parents' directions. And if you're not well versed in the field of education, it's not expected for a parent to understand all of this jargon and terms you're throwing around. And then, there's the whole political thing going on around education and what people want to see, and the involvement and pushing towards more parental involvement, which I think is a positive thing. And then there's the effect on teachers and the school system. um, Teachers are being asked to carry a heavy burden in their career in general, but being asked to go back to the classroom in the midst of a pandemic, if you will, after everything that went on, and seeing all the learning loss. But before the pandemic, teachers were loaded. Unfortunately, we're living in a society that is driven by data. And I love data, but our students, our learners, our children are not test scores. They're not that set of data. So it has affected everyone. And most specifically, it has affected our marginalized population.
Mm.
And I say that because there are less resources, or there's less access or knowledge of certain resources that are there. Um, I teach in the classroom still, as well as tutoring through Priority Academic Tutoring. And I teach in Baltimore City, and I have some students who didn't have internet access, didn't have devices to use. So that's just one little thing. We're also talking about the social emotional aspects and the wholeness of how it has affected everyone. um, so all of those populations, all of those subsets within this have been affected.
Mm, mm. Let's talk about social emotional learning. So, my initial question was, what's the current situation? Are students meeting grade level expectations? And I think the first thing that jumps to people's minds when we're talking about school and education is the academics, the content,
Yeah.
you know, whether we're talking about history, science, English, or math. But what else do parents need to be aware of? Is this just an academic issue? It sounds like it's not.
It's absolutely not. And this is a very important question that you've laid out, because when we look at educating, you have to look at the whole child, the whole person being presented to you. Not only that, you have to look at the funds of knowledge, the families, the backgrounds, everything that they're coming with. And teachers, they the majority of teachers anyway, they're looking at it from this lens, like, I want to be able to help all 21, all 25, all 30 of these students. I want to get to know them personally, because it's the whole person that you are educating. So socially and emotionally, the pandemic, okay, for instance, I have a high schooler, and it really affected high school students. She was able to log on to the computer, and she was able to navigate Blackboard or navigate these different assignments and do the research. Um, but it affected her in other ways. She wasn't able to go to cheerleading. She wasn't able to meet with her social circle. She wasn't able to go to the cafeteria and chat about the assignments, or go to that specialized time of the day where students can go and just study. Weren't able to access the teacher as much for study hall or extra help. So socially and emotionally, this has also done something to everyone. And socially and emotionally, meaning the social elements of it and how it's affecting you as a person. So when looking at the whole child, it there are definite effects from the pandemic into this last year of schooling with all of the changes. I have seen where students are coming to tutoring sessions or are coming into the classroom, and they are more dependent upon parental or teacher-based support. So they're less independent because for a year and a half, 2 years, you've had someone kind of supporting you, being there. So versus before the pandemic, where students were a little more self-reliant. So we're having to teach in the classroom now, hey, these are certain life skills, or these are certain social skills, or these are certain ways we behave in public. Um, in a kindergarten classroom, for example, one student wanted to use the restroom and decided to disrobe on his way there. And yeah, but and as funny as it is thinking of it outside of that, it's because we're relearning, even as adults, how to operate in social settings. And for the first time being in school, and think about it, a kindergartner when the pandemic started was like 3.
Right.
So now I'm learning how to go into this large group of people, and hey, there's rules around toileting. Hey, there's rules in the classroom. Whereas at home, when I'm learning on the computer, I can go grab a snack, or I can shout, hey, to mom to help me. So in the classroom setting, we're having to cue in even more to these social and emotional aspects, as well as teaching children how to tune into their feelings, how to tune into self regulation, and understanding, hey, feeling frustration is okay. Let's work through that. So that's an added component that I think that the school systems are trending in the direction of supporting more, which is good.
Mhm.
But definitely one that was affected.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
can see that. I have 2 kids as well, and children as well, and my oldest is about to be a kindergartner, and there's so much that she missed because she's been isolated for such a long time. And so I can totally see how a kid was like,
Yeah.
well, I've been at home. It's totally cool if as I'm like walking down my bedroom
Yeah.
hallway, I could take off my pants, where
Yeah.
it's like, no, that's not cool. We can't do that.
Yeah. Let's
Um,
get there quick and let's go. And yeah. And yeah, it's just takes, and we in the education field, you have a lot of new teachers who might not be expecting certain things, where they're expecting to go into the classroom and let's teach,
right,
and then
right.
there's all these other elements. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, we have to talk about. So the first couple weeks of school, teachers and educators and admin, they already know the first couple of weeks is about laying foundation, and it's more so about laying foundations, but also taking a new view on what the classroom should look like. And that's a different conversation, but it's an important conversation because this whole structured assembly line type thing, in my opinion, it's not really what works anymore. So maybe we've shifted into seeing things from a better place, because if you learn better by standing up, but you're focused and listening, even in my one-on-one tutoring sessions or my small group tutoring sessions, if you're flicking the pen, or we might call them fidgets, or little bands on the seats and things like that, those are things that, hey, if you're listening and you're learning, that's what matters, how you do it. So I think there's positives from it as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's always good to reflect upon practice and see what works and what isn't, and maybe reevaluate, like, oh, we've been doing this for a long time and it's maybe not the best way. We can do it better. So we've
Yeah.
definitely talked a lot about some of these big problems. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some solutions in general. What do you think parents should be doing to support their kids right now?
Well, I want to start by saying, any parents who are listening, like, don't blame yourself. Give yourself grace, because a lot of parents who will approach me, either from the classroom standpoint or the tutoring standpoint, are always like, I don't know, what I did. I don't know what to do. I mean, I learned like this, and maybe it's because of me, or did I do enough? Just stop that, because it's not your fault. And just listening to this, or looking for resources, or even questioning, like, what can I do? That's step number one. And it shows that you've always done the right thing. Students learn very differently, each and every one of them. And what teachers would love to do in the classroom is to be able to provide that individualized instruction where I have Sally and I have Joe and I have Mary and I have Davon and all of these different students, and they're all different. They all learn differently. They might ride the same bus, they might live in the same community. That doesn't matter. They all learn differently. So in the classroom, teachers would love to be able to individualize that instruction as much as possible, but to the defense of the classroom educator, that doesn't always happen,
Right.
because it's almost impossible with every task that you have in this backpack that you're walking around and having to unpack all day, to be able to do. And the love of education comes from being able to help. Teachers want to help. So sometimes those individual needs are not being met because even in small group, 4 to 6 students, I might not be able to reach the exact need that one specific student has. But so we're looking at it from that angle. Parents, it's not your fault. Teachers, it's not your fault. We just need to learn how to be able to find that balanced art of education. I am going to be able to um, internalize what my child, from the parent perspective, what it is that my child needs to learn in this grade, or what is expected of them in this class. So that could start by asking the teacher at the very beginning of the year, even at the back to school night, hey, what is the scope and sequence? What is the roadmap to this year? What does it look like? What does my child need to learn or know by the end of kindergarten? What is the expectation in first grade? What is the expectation in third grade, fifth grade, 12th grade, whatever?
Mhm.
Expectations grow and change and adapt each year. So understanding the roadmap of learning will help parents understand, hey, okay, so I know that in first grade, one of the big goals is to be able to add within 10 fluently, quickly. I know that 6 and 4, 10, 7 and 3 is 10. They need to be able to decode certain phonics skills. What are those phonics skills? So understanding those things. It has long been the norm to say by third grade, students need to be able to read. So by third grade, we're learning to read, and third to fourth grade, we're reading to learn. The,
Hmm.
the switch flips a little.
Right.
So knowing that, hey, okay, as a parent, my child in first grade seems to be struggling a little bit with this reading, but keeping the broad lens, okay, by third grade, I know that I want them to be able to read fluently, read conversationally, read with pausing appropriately, and not just word level reading or reading with that intonation, but also comprehending and understanding what they're reading. Okay, we're in first grade. We have 2 more years to make sure that by third grade, middle of third grade, you're now reading with no problem. You're understanding what you're reading, and now you're digging in more and doing research. So understanding that, and that's going to come from a very strong parent family connection.
Hmm.
You may get a teacher who just gives you that beautiful laid out sheet at the beginning of the year and says, hey, these are the modules we're following, or this is the curriculum, or hey, in module 1 or unit 1, this is what we're going to learn. You may not get that. And I want to say, feel as a parent confident to express your voice. Hey, I just want to know, what are they learning in, you could even say September, or what are they going to be learning in the first quarter? What are the big goals? What is the end goal of this module within this curriculum? So understanding what it is that your child is learning. But the most powerful tool of all is really not something we would think is academia at all. And that is experiences and exposures.
Hmm. Mhm.
So if you have literature in your house, magazines, newspapers, books, you are a million steps above many households in the world.
Hmm.
So you have already, I mean, I'm sitting here with your library behind you, like, yes, like there's book, some people don't even have that in their home. Why?
Mhm.
Because it may be an afterthought. Maybe it's just something they weren't raised around. Maybe the importance of it has never been laid out. But having some form of literature in your home, cooking together, doing puzzles together, visiting the museum, going to the grocery store, talking about ingredients or prices. All of those things are experiences and exposures. We don't have to all take a trip on an airplane somewhere far away to provide our kids with that, because we all can't do that. any experience and exposure that you have to your child, even if it's a young child, let's say a preschooler, and we're going to the mall. Oh, what letter is in that sign? Or I noticed a word that your teacher showed you. Do you see it? Things like that are learning experiences. They're growing that bond with your child while they're also learning, and they have no clue that they're learning. So those are the important things. And believe it or not, it gives a background knowledge for so much learning to occur in school.
That's really helpful. I think the two things that you said is one, a reminder that your teacher and your family are a team and you're educating your child together. And two, the power of experiences and the power of whatever it is, the simple things that everyone does every day, whether it's cooking or going to the store, there's an educational opportunity everywhere you look. And so parents just sort of, in some ways, narrating their day, like thinking about like, yeah, I'm debating between this brand or this brand, trying to decide what's the cheaper option, and looking at, the unit price and just saying that out loud. So then the child can experience that too. I think that's
Yeah,
a really great suggestion. Um,
yeah, very good, powerful tools.
Definitely. What would you say about kids who are, or parents who are starting to worry that their child is behind other students, or they're concerned that they're not learning at the rate that they think should meet those expectations that whether the teacher lays out at the beginning of the year or partway through the year? What should parents really be looking for, and when should they start getting worried?
Yeah. So in tutoring, I normally have one of two type of parents that comes forward, and neither one is wrong. So one of them is, hey, I feel like, and let me say three, because some people come with, hey, they're above, and I want some enrichment opportunities for them. So some of tutoring sessions happen because there's enrichment. We want to push, we want to give that rigor, and we want to kind of step outside of the box of the classroom and, give that little extra academic push. The second kind is, hey, I feel like I feel like they are a little bit behind. I could be wrong, but it just seems like when my child is reading, or when my child is adding, or when they're doing their homework, which a lot of times for parents, homework is a telltale sign, like, wait a minute, are they getting this or are they not? Are they really behind? Hmm. So you don't really know too much of what to look for. Um, so then they're like, questioning. So that's where, like, if if I was to step in as a tutor, I would do some there are assessments, but not so much like sit down and take this test. It's more like, let's see where the end goals, and let's see where they are. And then there's the third parent who might come and be like, the teacher said they're behind. I'm so worried. The test scores look low. Nobody in this is wrong. Everybody that comes forward wants to help their child, is seeking the best, right? So if you don't really know what to look for, or you're not sure if they're behind, I think there's a good line of defense. Go to the teacher, and talk about it. Hey, I've noticed that they have been bringing home homework and it seems as if they're a bit lost. Don't be afraid as a parent to open that line of communication up and ask those questions. Phone call, text message, email, however your child's teacher opens that door for you to communicate. Don't be afraid to step through it, because I've had multiple kinds of experiences as a parent. One where I was alerted too late, one where I was alerted super early, and one where we had an even kill conversation across the board throughout the school year. So I was very well aware. So that could be the case. And I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong here, but open those lines of communication up early. I always say, hey, I just want you to know when they send those forms home, here's my email, here's my phone number. Behaviorally or academically, if anything seems awry, I would like an immediate phone call home or message home, however you choose, because I'm on board with you and I want my child to succeed.
Mhm.
So letting them know that up front. And then, hey, what's going on here? The homework looks a little iffy. When I ask them to read, it seems a little choppy. Is this normal? Because sometimes parents don't know. Most of the time, parents don't know the expectation. They're just thinking, like, oh, their cousin or their neighbor reads really
Right.
well, or they're doing
Right.
that math really easy. So steer clear of the compare game. there's a lot of reasons behind that too. So let's just think of your individual child's strengths. What are their strengths? What are their needs? What is their learning style? Talk to the teacher, see what they say. If they have a little bit of worry too, hey, are there some extra things you can send home for me? I'm not asking you to go out of your way too much, but is there something you could even recommend me to print? Shoot me an email to print off, an extra pack of homework, send me something for the curriculum so I can understand what you're doing in class. So that line of defense. And then if the worries are still there from the home and school connection, and the, trying to look at resources that are available to you, trying to help them. And maybe you're the parent like me, where my son needed extra help and I was not the one who could provide it. He didn't want to learn for me to save either one of our souls. It was frustrating. I wanted to pull my hair out. It just wasn't working. And I'm an educator. So I was like, okay, maybe you're that parent. And a lot of times it does take someone who's not the parent to provide that support. So don't feel bad if you're like me. But then it might be time after that. It might be a conversation for a pediatrician. Do I need to talk to my child's pediatrician and see, hey, are these learning difficulties possibly a learning disability? Don't be afraid of learning disability, because that's also a very loaded term. Learning disabilities can stem from anything from dyslexia to just a language processing, where the child might not be receiving the instructions or the directions you're giving them, or maybe it is expressive, where they're not giving it back. Like, they're getting what you're saying and they have an answer, but it's harder for them to formulate how to give you that answer. It could even be attention. I mean, disability, it's a tough word, but don't be afraid of it. So if you're suspecting, and maybe even the teacher's suspecting some things going on with learning, pediatrician might be able to help. And then there's also tutoring available through many different companies offer it. There's virtual tutoring, there's in-person tutoring, there's mobile tutoring that comes to you. So there's plenty of resources there. The end all be all, first line of defense is build that relationship with the school and the teachers, see their thoughts, make sure you're thinking along the right way, and then start to build up a little platform of resources. And then maybe it's time to reach out to someone else who can help and help you get a better lens on your individual child.
That's really helpful. And I think, your reminder of, again, go to the teacher first. It makes so much sense, but yet sometimes it's hard to remember in the moment. So you were, starting to dive into resources, and that's something that I wanted to make sure that we did talk a little bit about, is, if you're a parent that's new to seeking help, academic help or social emotional help, if everything's been fine until this moment,
Yeah.
where do you go for those resources? And I think your recommendation of a pediatrician, again, it's one that I don't think parents would necessarily think right off the top of the head, even though that's been, a relationship that you've had since literally day one. And then tutoring, like, how do you go about choosing a tutor, or where is some place you could go to actually look at maybe what are some ideas for resources and how to find the best one that meets your needs?
Yeah. So the last part of what you said is the most important. What matches your needs, your end goal, your mission, your vision for your child, their learning style, their strengths, their capabilities? That's very important, and one that we also often tend to overlook because there's so many opportunities and options. So part one of your question, some resources, there are tons of them out there. So it's like, oh, when I go online, I'm seeing all of these things. And when I look one up, all of these other things that want me to pay for them shoot my way. There's some free, there's some not free. There's some that are catered to certain grade levels and not others. So Prodigy is a great resource for first through eighth graders. Photo Math, my high school daughter has used and loved. Khan Academy is a great tool. MobyMax, which costs, but I actually really love myself. Start at the ones that the teachers are sending home.
Okay.
So for instance, Anne Arundel County uses iReady. So if you have a student in Anne Arundel County, you're probably heard of iReady, and they get that login. Let them use it every night at home, 15, 20 minutes, because that tool is free to you. It's very costly if you want to go purchase it, but it it coincides with what they're learning at school. So amplify for you'll get home these assessments, the little running man with the red, the yellow, the green that you probably don't really understand, and you need somebody to break it down for you. Why is my kid red or why are they green? What does this mean? But anyway, amplify coincides to that. So why I say use those first is because we want to make sure that we're not overwhelming children with all of these different resources. Because even though there are a lot, sometimes more is more harmful than less. We want to make sure that the resources that we are giving them, that they're meaningful and impactful. It meets their learning strengths and needs. They like it. Okay, they need to like it. That's important too. We want them to like learning, and also that it is tying into what they're learning at school. And again, that's another thing that we could talk about for days. Like, hey, are we doing you know, life skills? Are we doing learning hands-on and trades? Those things are important, but when they're sitting in front of reading or a curriculum, we want to make sure that what we're giving them as an extra resource is going to help them in the classroom, not just for what we think they need help with, especially so if they may be falling behind a little bit academically. And then, so those are some resources that I like. Websites, again, some free, some paid for. The other part is it's very important. And I'm saying this from the lens of educator, but also a small business owner, a tutoring company. You don't just want to jump out there if you're going to spend your money and just pick anyone. And you want to make sure it's a good fit. And I've told everyone who's ever called me for a consultation, we sit and we have a conversation. I give them my philosophy and my perspective, why I started and how I do things. And I do it from an educator lens. I'm going in to meet either that one child or that small group of children, and I'm meeting them where they need me. I'm learning them and I'm learning their family, and I am creating goals and lesson plans that meet their needs. Whereas some tutoring companies have curriculums, like a one size fits all, and they use a specific curriculum. And I'm not knocking that, because that curriculum might be good for some learners. So you want to make sure that if you're looking for a tutor that you're going to pay for, that is going to help your child grow. Because one-on-one learning is very powerful. I have witnessed students grow a year and a half worth of reading in 6 months. And that all comes coupled from the classroom with that one-on-one experience. So one-on-one learning is very empowering. Small groups, 4, no more than 6 kids together with similar learning needs and styles, those things are very powerful. But you want to make sure that their vision, their philosophy, the curriculum that may be used, is it what I need? Is it what my learner needs? And that's very important. I would never say, hey, if you meet me and we discuss and you're like, not really that vision, I want you to go somewhere where their vision matches your vision, because it's important. Very important. So the other piece outside of that is, again, that curricular piece. What curriculum do you offer? What assessments are you giving, or what types of things are you doing? What formative assessments? What are you building within to see where my child is, and are they meeting the goals that they need? So asking those questions to a tutoring company is very important. Also, knowing what the tutoring company is offering in terms of their knowledge, their backgrounds. We at Priority Academic Tutoring are all teachers, all highly effective, and many will be paired up based on other degrees they hold. ESOL certification, English second language learners, special ed students may need some outside tutoring. So I would want to pair you up with a teacher who has special ed certification. Are you well versed in a specific curriculum that through the consultation I decided, hey, it sounds like this curriculum may work for that particular child. Some tutoring companies are hiring college students, which is fine as well, but you want to know those things when you're choosing and paying for a service. that is going to leave a life lasting impression on your child's scope and outcome of life learning.
Mhm,
So those are all important pieces to the puzzle.
mhm, mhm. Absolutely. It's so much to think about, but I think the way that you laid it out, it's like, okay, first off, I love in the very beginning of our conversation, you were like, "You're doing a good job, calm down." And
Yeah,
then
I mean
and
it.
helping just parents be able to see, it's okay to talk to your teacher, and it's not only okay, but it's critical to have that relationship and build that relationship and know what is to be expected of their student and then where to seek help. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Tiffanie. This is really helpful.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you for speaking with us today and for giving so much great information. Also, thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. Make sure that you do visit chesapeakefamily.com for local up-to-date information on home health and living for today's Maryland parent. This episode will be archived on chesapeakefamily.com in both video and podcast format. We'll also make sure that we put up those resources that Tiffanie mentioned, so you can just check those out there. I'm Janet Jefferson with Chesapeake Family Life and Third Floor Views. Thank you.